There are 9 finches in North America that you can identify right now. You recognize this one? How about this one? And this one? Can you do it blindfolded? In just a few minutes, you're going to know exactly how to do it. And the birds are going to do all the work. When you're trying to identify a bird, no bird gives you more clues than a finch. Well, a peacock maybe. Pay particular attention to finch clue number 2, because that's by far the most important one. But let's settle a few things first. There's a bunch of ways I can screw this up. Finches are in the fringillid family. There's about 200 species in the world in about 60 different genera, including Hawaiian honeycreeper and euphonia. And there are some birds that sound like they might be finches, but they're not. For instance, evening grosbeak and pine grosbeak, they are in the finch family. Rose-breasted grosbeak and blue grosbeak are actually in the cardinal family. Then there are all of Darwin's finches in the Galapagos, the ones that inspired his theory of evolution. Turns out they're now classified mostly as tanagers, not finches. Still with me? I'm talking about 9 species of finch that can be found in eastern North America. There are more out west. There are some other goldfinches. There's Cassin's finch. There's rosy finches. We're not counting those. And if somebody made a video on those western finches, I'd watch it. No, the finches I have to deal with here right in eastern North America, especially in Maine, come in 3 sizes, small, medium, and large. And that's going to be clue number 1, size. All right, the first of the small finches, pretty universal in North America, American goldfinch. Second one, pine siskin. Third one, common redpoll. A fourth one is hoary redpoll. We're not even entirely sure it's a different species. I've only seen 2 in the last year, so I'm going to lump them in with the commons. Goldfinches and siskins are in the same genus. Redpolls have their own genus, but they act so similar. They're the same size. They eat pretty much the same thing. So I'll just lump them all 3 together. Small finches you can identify right now. I'll put 4 species in the medium category. Purple finch and house finch, white-winged crossbill, and red crossbill. They're all about the size of a large sparrow with a bill that's heavier than a sparrow's. Those are going to be the toughest. I'm going to take them last. Then the large ones are evening grosbeak and pine grosbeak. They're just slightly smaller than a cardinal, but close enough. So 200 species in the world, but we're only going to worry about 9 of them. All right, here we go. Clue number 2. Finches are just about the noisiest bird on the planet. So finding them is surprisingly easy because they're always telling you who they are and where they are. 80% of the time, I hear them before I see them. Okay, let's take the wee 3, goldfinch, siskin, and redpoll. They all have easy to remember distinctive call notes and flight notes, and they warble long musical songs. American goldfinch. It has the sweetest song of the bunch, and sooner or later, it's going to say potato chip. Potato chip. They're going to do that when they're flying over. They're going to do it when they're sitting down. They're going to throw it into the middle of their long, beautiful songs. All 3 finches have a jri that they throw in whenever they feel like it. And the American goldfinch has the most musical, least buzzy of that jri thing they do. What the American goldfinch does with potato chip, the pine siskin does with pew or peanut. It's a 2-note phrase, real quick. The second note is lower than the first. It's their definite flight note. You hear that most of the time when it's flying over. And they'll throw it right in the middle of their songs. Listen for that pew. Pine siskins, when they're just sitting around or feeding, they are chattering constantly. They're probably the noisiest of the bunch. And they throw in their own jri, which is longer, buzzier, and really emphatic towards the end. The redpoll is a little more difficult for me because they're not here in summer. I only hear them in winter, and only in winters they choose to come down and flood into Maine. But it's a quick 2-note phrase, real quick. And I call it Quidditch, like the Harry Potter game, Quidditch. Most books will write it down as chit-chit, but that's it. Really quick, two-note, chit-chit. Now, when they really get going, they just string them all together, so it's a whole series of chatter that sounds like chit-chit-chit-chit-chit-chit-chit, chit-chit-chit-chit-chit-chit. The Jri is more nasal and buzzy, but it's a little less emphatic than the other two. All right, don't look at the bird. Listen, American goldfinch, Jri. Pine siskin, Jri. Common redpoll, Jri. Now, let's take them all in the bunch, because that's how you're going to encounter them a lot in the winter. In fact, these guys you're about to see, they all came from northern Minnesota when I went there last year. Pine siskins, let her rip. Common redpolls. In fact, these guys, they were on my porch a couple of years ago. Thank goodness the big finches are a lot easier. Evening grosbeaks, all they do is shriek. They do this when they're flying over. They do this when they're sitting down. They're doing this when they're feeding. You can hear this a quarter mile away. They are loud. Plus, they're big and yellow. Pine grosbeaks, kind of a sweet trio of notes. Call note is the same but shorter. It's just sort of like the first two notes together. Okay, here's my little trick for remembering pine grosbeak. And I admit this is a little crazy, but if you have greater yellowlegs and you know that 2-2-2 sound they make, well, pine grosbeaks are doing sort of those same notes and phrase. It's just a lot sweeter. And boy, from a tree top in a boreal forest, that really stands out. Okay, that's the little ones and the big ones. Medium ones, maybe a little harder. I'm going to change scenery so we can get ourselves surrounded by some more of them just to try to make it at least a little more visual, if not chaotic. Okay, this was a bad idea. Hey, can you hold it down? I'm trying to talk here. Here's my secret. Gyps. Seriously? Red crossbill flies over doing the gyp gyp thing, just as I'm telling you about it. All four do variations on gyp call notes. Purple finches do single gyps. They can string single gyps together so it sounds like multiple gyps, but it's not like crossbills. Crossbills do double gyps, gyp gyp, gyp gyp, or click click, click click. House finches do singles like purple finches do, but it's much more nasal. It's almost like click instead of gyp. I know I'm splitting hairs, but once you get used to it, you can really hear the difference. Purple finches and house finches do warbles. It's a beautiful melodic series of notes going fast up and down. Purple finches are much clearer and sweeter. House finches are much more nasal, really stands out different. Purple finches and house finches don't overlap much. Purple's much more woodland, rural. House finches definitely suburban. In fact, they will nest on your porch. Oh, so cute. I got to watch these guys fledge, and then I had to clean all their poop off the porch. Now, crossbills. Oh boy, they have a big vocabulary and they talk a lot. As I'm standing right here, These white-winged crossbills are giving me their entire repertoire. One of them is the constant dink-dinks. Dink, 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 dink. Well, listen, and you can hear the jip-jips too. And they're singing like crazy today. It's a really beautiful trill that varies in pitch. When they get going like this, it's a great day to be in the woods. No matter what they're doing, white-winged crossbill is always much more nasal than the red crossbills. Red crossbills are their own kind of trouble. Last I looked, there are at least 10 identified different types. The problem is that all these regional groups of crossbills are evolving to eat the cones that are there. And in the West, in some areas, the cones are just much bigger, so their bills are bigger. And because of all this variation, each regional group has its own distinct sound of jip-jips. Experts can actually tell the difference by the difference in jip-jips, but that's another whole video. I'm not going there. I'm not that kind of expert. These are type 12, I think. Close your eyes and listen. Get that double call note jip-jip, and notice how much stronger it is than the nasal jip-jip of the white-winged crossbill. Look, all these finches, all 9 finches, are trying to do you a favor by giving you more clues. For instance, they all come down to the road to pick up grit. And often they will commingle. You'll get several species together just in one pile of sand. Even though all the finches have similar diets, they're not quite identical. So there are some variations in what they eat. And for instance, this year, white-winged crossbills are crazy up here in the North Maine woods, but very few red crossbills. It's a big white pine cone crop this year in southern Maine, and that's where most of them are. Look, this was a rather simplified way of presenting finches and trying to improve identification skills. Experts are going to look at this and say, what was he thinking? If you have any complaints or suggestions, put them in the comments right after you hit subscribe. All right, back to work, everybody.